Hey gang, don't forget, you can take advantage of all the music that you would like to hear, all the podcasts you want to hear, in a free trial of Amazon Music Unlimited. Go to getamazonmusic.com/unclejoshtruescarystories for your free trial today. Check it out. 70 million plus songs. All kinds of podcasts, including mine, are at your fingertips on any device you would like to use. Laptop, desktop, phone, tablet, whatever you like using. Go check it out. Simply go to getamazonmusic.com/unclejoshtruescarystories for your free trial today. I love using it, and I listen to it every single day, whether it's a podcast or it is music. getamazonmusic.com/unclejoshtruescarystories. Your free trial awaits you today. Now, without any further ado, Campfire Crew, let's get it on. Crazy in an Uber, submitted by Amber Y. Let me start by saying I'm a 25-year-old female with a good head on her shoulders and a good right jab. I'll get into that. I've been using Uber since it started and have never had a problem with them. And I still do use them as I don't drive and have no real need for a car yet. I'll keep things vague for a reason, but I will say that I live outside of Los Angeles. One night, I was leaving a club after seeing a great band. My friends were staying later, and I had to work in the morning, hence my call to Uber. Some of the wait times were longer than I was comfortable with, but there was an Uber pool that was available, and I thought, okay, screw it. Just get home in time to get some sleep and then get to work on time. I waited for a few minutes, and a black SUV pulled up. It was my Uber, with a guy already inside who was riding shotgun. I got in and said hello, and away we went. We had one more pickup on my way home, which was the closest destination. We all small-talked before picking up the last person, a guy in baggy sweatpants, a hoodie, and kind of sketchy as hell. But then again, who was I to judge? At that point, I just wanted to go home. He got in the back with space between us, and our driver started off again. No sweat. 10 minutes to get home. The driver and the guy up front got talking about sports, and the guy in back started talking to me, asking my name and stuff. I was nice to him, but not really wanting to talk. That's when I noticed he was doing something. He kept reaching over to grab my clutch, which I finally picked up gently and took it from my side and put it in my lap. He leaned over and said that we should go out sometime, and I told him to give me his business card and I'd think about it. He didn't have any business cards. We drove for another few minutes before the guy said to the driver, "Hey man, keep driving until I tell you to stop, and everyone give it up. All your shit." I looked over, and he had a knife in his hand which he was holding up for everyone to see. My heart jumped into my throat. He said again for us to give him all of our stuff, and the driver told him that he needed to stop. He had all of his information, and that if he kept driving, he was only going to go to a police station. The guy started yelling even louder and waving the knife around, and I was terrified. I was just cringing against the door on my side, while the guy in the front kept yelling, "Calm the fuck down, man, calm down." I started to reach for my phone, and this guy said, "Give it up, bitch, all your shit." For 1 second, I was ready to wait for the next light, throw my stuff at him, and jump out. But for whatever reason, I got mad. When the driver was coming to a light, I held my breath, leaned forward, and shot a right cross against this guy's jaw. His head cranked off his window, and the guy in front realized that they had a split second to get in on this. The driver slammed it into park, and both of the men in front jumped out, as so did I. They dragged the guy out before I knew it, and the driver, turns out, was an ex-cop. I started to call 911, and he said, "Fuck that, call this number." He yelled out a number at me, while he had the guy on the ground, and the other guy was also on the phone. The number he gave me was a current officer who answered right away, as his personal phone. I told him the driver's name, and he said he was on it after I told him where we were. Out here, normal wait times for PD can take forever, but it was less than 10 minutes of this asshole just threatening us, yelling for us to let him go, But here came the cavalry. In seconds, this guy was being cuffed and stuffed. No questions asked. It was another hour and a half before I stopped talking to officer after officer telling him my story. One female cop told me I should quit my job and become a Leo. No thanks. Well, the guy had a stolen phone, a burner phone, stolen credit cards, and he had made his Uber account just about 2 hours before all of this happened. I was shook up, and the police gave me a ride back to my flat as the driver was still handling some things with them. I saw that driver a few months after this. He's now working security at the very same club I was at the night that I met him. The last time I saw him, he laughed and said, "That guy was a moron. Fucking with a Latina is the last thing you want to do." True that. Still use Uber, no more pools, and don't fuck with me. Black Things in the Country, submitted by Orange Potato. So, over this week I was visiting relatives. On the way home driving through Indiana in the country, where no more than 2 cars are ever on the same road at once, I saw something. I was in the car alone, and it was getting dark, with the clouds turning the shade of gray, and it was also starting to rain a bit. It was only a light drizzle. Out there in the country, you don't see many things other than the rare farmer or maybe a small animal. I was driving through random towns, following my GPS, and most of the towns were old and worn down, with hardly any people appearing to occupy the houses. It was after driving out of a certain town, I began to see them. I was looking out at the scenery of what I thought was corn and maybe some grain, when I saw something black slip behind a fence, and I can only describe what I saw as sort of a stick figure-like creature that seemed to be able to bend its body to hide behind anything, so it just kind of appeared to be a shadow. It was not the only one I saw. I wasn't drunk, though I did have a case of root beer in the back. I kept seeing these things out of the corner of my eye, moving themselves behind a tree or a fence or a car. And I could sense something was there, but I couldn't figure out what these things were. They were fast and apparently did not like being looked at, but you could sometimes see something black slipping behind an object to just remain hidden, like these were some kind of creature born in the shadows, and they would become shadows just to hide. I can't remember, but I think it's the Navajo folks who believe in the creature called a skinwalker or skinhead or something. I think they are black, but I don't know a whole lot about them. I'm not sure if those things were skinwalkers or not. Or maybe it was my imagination, or maybe I was just seeing shadows. But either way, whatever they were real, and they were not oddly creepy, but didn't seem to pose any real threat. I know this doesn't sound very scary, but being alone driving is not always fun when you don't have someone else to say they saw something as well. But maybe, if you ever drive through Indiana, you will see these things as well. Anyway, Uncle Josh, keep up the good work. Fake Interview, submitted by Jenny. A few years ago, I was looking for some side work as my job as an office assistant wasn't giving me as much leeway as far as extra spending. I was still trying to get a job in marketing, but as an early grad, it really wasn't working out the way I thought it would. I just took a job hoping to learn and then move on. So I looked all over the place for part-time work, and I found something on Craigslist, and it sounded like a good deal. It was a local guy selling cosmetics that he actually owned in a business he was running out of his house. He didn't come right out and say it, but it sounded like he had been purchasing cosmetics from a lot of people who had given up on a pyramid scheme that a certain company gets people into. So I called him, and he said he was not operating under the company, which I will not name, but he was selling off all the products he was buying. He also said he was selling a bunch of other multi-level marketing products as well. Foods, juicers, all kinds of things. He was looking for some help, and I thought, hey, what the hell? He asked me to meet him at his home office, and I agreed to hear more about this opportunity. Not that it was that big of a deal, but I thought, hey, if I can earn a couple of extra bucks on the side, why not? I did ask him to show me some of his inventory, which he did, sort of. He sent some pictures of things, and I took the chance. He was very nice, very cordial, and very businesslike. So, I went to his house after my day job a few days later, and it was in a really nice neighborhood. There was a Corvette in the driveway, and after I parked, I went up to the garage that was open and saw lots of boxes stacked up. I figured that was all the items he had purchased and was reselling. I texted him that I was there, and he came out and greeted me. Super nice guy. He thanked me for coming, and we went into his house. He had a basement office, and a ton more boxes were stacked up down there. The guy asked me a lot of questions about my background. Had I ever been in sales? Ever done cold calling? Ever done door-to-door sales? That sort of thing. Honestly, it was kind of a normal conversation. I got comfortable with things and was thinking maybe I could help him sell some of this stuff to family and friends, and I told him I already had a steady day job, so I might not be able to treat this like a full-time job. He was totally cool with that. We started to talk about a commission and how I would get paid based on what I sold. Then his phone rang and he answered it. He looked at me and said, "I apologize, I need to take this call. I'm sorry. Can you wait outside? This is kind of a private matter." I said, "Sure." Stepped out of his office into the part of the basement where all the boxes were stacked up. He closed the door and kept talking. I waited for a few minutes looking around at all the other things down there. A pool table, a bar, stuff that made a man cave cool. I had then looked down at my phone and bumped into one of the boxes and it tipped over. I thought it was weird because it was super light and I barely bumped into it. The lid was open and I got curious, so I kind of pried the rest of it open and there was nothing in it but shredded paper. I thought that was really odd. So I picked it up and put it back, but then looked in another box that also was open. Same thing. Nothing but shredded paper. I walked up and down tapping on the boxes and could tell right away that there was nothing in these boxes, but probably nothing but shredded paper. I then heard this guy through his office door say something like, "Yeah, she's perfect. If I get her, she's his." It didn't dawn on me right away that he might be talking about me, but then he said, "Yeah, about 5'8", blonde hair. Exactly. Exactly. What he wants." That I remember him saying verbatim. That was when I decided this was not a legit thing going on, and I got a shiver down my spine. I knew then and there that I had been lured here for other purposes. This guy was not selling cosmetics and other kinds of stuff. So I quietly walked up the stairs to the outside and let myself out into the garage. And just for curiosity again, I looked into a few of the other boxes up there, and they were also empty. That was it. I ran down the driveway and jumped into my car. As I did, he was coming out of the garage and I just pulled away. My phone started blowing up with texts and calls from him, but I didn't answer them. I was already talking to my friend about what had just happened. She yelled at me for going into a stranger's house and said I should call the police, which I did when I caught my breath and stopped at a gas station. They basically told me if he had done nothing other than talk to me, there was nothing they could do. And truth be told, the guy really didn't do anything. But I was so creeped out from his words, and the fact that he said he had all that product that simply didn't exist was really messed up. I met my friend out at a bar after this, and we were both convinced that this was some sort of human trafficking thing. And people listening to this may laugh and say I overreacted, but I'm telling you, when I heard him describing me and that someone else was looking for a girl like me, I knew that guy was not selling tons of products. He was selling something else, and I'm glad it wasn't me. The last time I drove by that place, maybe a month later, there was a for sale sign on the front lawn. Laundromat Scare by Jim Beam Beamer. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, my wife and I were living in an apartment with a hand-me-down clothes washer and dryer. Of course, as hand-me-downs, they eventually failed, and I had no way of repairing them. And quite frankly, it didn't make any sense to do that instead of just going and buying new appliances. The problem with that was, we didn't really have the money to do so. So, the last night the washer broke down, I just got pissed, grabbed all of our clothes, and stormed out the door to the local laundromat. This was probably around 1 a.m., and I needed clothes for the next day, as did my wife. When I got to the laundromat, predictably no one was there. A blessing and a curse. It's nice to have all that access to every washer and dryer, but it was kind of creepy being there by myself. I never had to do clothes in a laundromat before, but I chalked it up to, hey, this is actually a good thing. And I mean, if you've never had to do clothes in a laundromat before, having the place to yourself is kind of a good thing. I loaded up about 6 washers full of clothes, got things running, and then sat down to screw around on my phone for a little while. When all the washing was done, no one had still come in, and I thought, awesome, all the dryers are mine too. I got all of my clothes out, got them into dryers, and fired those up. I knew that it would be a little bit longer because the dryers take longer than the washing machines. Once I had everything going, I sat back down and started to hear this strange thumping sound coming from a closet on the other side of the room. The only other thing in this place at that time of night was a change machine. During the day, I knew there were attendants who actually would do other people's laundry for them, fold their clothes, that kind of stuff. But now it was just me and this weird thumping sound. So I walked over towards the closet where the change machine was, and the sound stopped. But then I jumped out of my pants when there was banging on the windows behind me. I can't describe it any way other than this. It was just this dark shape standing at the window and looking in at me. My first thought was, oh great, a mugger. Shit, I'm going to get robbed. But this thing, whatever it was, just stood there banging on the window with both hands. It took me a few minutes before I decided I wasn't going to be a chicken, and I slowly started walking over to the window to get a better look. I also thought that maybe by me walking over to it, whatever it was or whoever it was, it would walk away. But the closer I got to it, the more it would bang on the windows. That's when I noticed it was in the shape of a human being, but clearly it had no eyes. I mean none. Not like empty sockets. It was just no eyes. I know this sounds crazy, but this is really what happened. I got right up to the window and was about to hold up my phone to take a picture, and it stopped banging. It then pointed a hand off to the side, not at me, but just off to the side, and at that exact moment, all of the dryers that I had put my clothes in had the doors rip open and slam against the machines. I jumped back, looking at them scared as hell at this point. I mean, the problem was the door was right next to this window. My car was next to this thing, and I had nowhere else to go. I yelled out, "What do you want from me?" And it kind of swayed back and forth before pointing its hand out to the side again, and all of the dryer doors then slammed back the way they had just been ripped open. I yelled again, "What do you want?" But this thing just slowly started walking backwards, then turned and faded away into the darkness. I called my wife, terrified about what had happened, and she only laughed and said it was my imagination. But it wasn't, because I had to go back and check on all of the dryers, and thankfully most everything was dry, and I ended up just stuffing it into laundry bags and baskets. I surveyed the parking lot before I ran outside, opened my trunk, and just started throwing things in. For every second I was in that parking lot, I thought this thing would come back and do something even stranger than what I had just seen. Thank the Lord that didn't happen, and I got home safe. My wife still teases me about this, but I'm dead serious. That happened. I know exactly what I experienced and what I saw. And I'm also completely honest that I went out and bought a new washing machine 3 days later. I'll never use a dating app again. Submitted by Mike P. Please don't think that I'm bashing all online dating services. I'm not going to mention the one I used that led to this story. I mean, I'm sure lots of people have great experiences, but I did not. After a messy breakup with a longtime girlfriend, I took some time off from the dating scene before getting back into the mix. At the time, I was really into cycling, triathlons, and running, so that took up most of my time. Then, after racing in a local crit, I took a bad spill. My right knee got really jacked up, and the doctor told me I needed to rehab and stay off it, other than his prescribed treatment. I figured this was a sign to give other things a shot with someone else. All the stuff my friends and their wives and girlfriends tried to set me up with, they were terrible ideas. Well, they weren't all bad women, just not a good fit, and maybe not as bad as what I did next in retrospect. My thinking led me to say, screw the bar scene, give a dating service a chance, and I jumped in with both feet. I filled out the profile, they made matches for me, and every night after work I'd see who they thought was a good fit. And this is where Claire, not her real name, comes into the picture. She was my age, into fitness, very pretty, and so on, and we matched up well, I thought. I sent her an email, and she returned the email and talked about herself. After that, I was really digging her, and I sent one back doing the same thing about myself. We kept at it for a few days before sharing phone numbers, and then started talking. She was a private French tutor and was born in France to boot. Yada yada yada, we met in person and started dating. I really liked her, and we spent a lot of time together. Dinners, easy cycling due to my knee, and I always laughed at first how she'd get mad at the other drivers on the road and yell at them at such when we were in the car together. I called her road rage as a joke. But then things started to go down a scary road. One night, we were out at a bar and talking with some of my friends. I had just introduced her to them. After a few drinks, she excused herself to the bathroom and went with my buddy's girlfriend. I'll call her Stacy. They were gone for a while, and then Stacy came back and started whispering to my buddy. After a few minutes, I asked, "Hey, did you flush Claire?" And everyone laughed, but them. A minute later, Claire came over and smiled at me and leaned in for a quick peck on the cheek. I thought, whatever, and we finished off the night and went home to her apartment. That's when I noticed she had blood on her shirt and jeans. I asked if she was okay, and she said that she had cut her hand in the bathroom, but she was fine. So she changed out of her clothes, we fooled around, and I just forgot about it. The next day, I had a doc appointment, so I had to leave her apartment early, and that's when my buddy called me. "Dude, what did you do after you left last night?" I said, "What? What are you talking about?" "My man, she didn't tell you?" I said, "Tell me what?" He said Claire got into a fight in the bathroom with some woman. She pulled a knife on her. Now, Claire didn't cut her, but she ended up cutting her own arm. I said, "No, I had no idea. That's not what she told me." And he said, "Dude, Stacy told me she watched the whole thing." I just said, "Fuck." I asked her about it, and she said she just cut her hand. And my buddy said, "It was because this woman was looking at you, dude." I told him I'd ask Claire about it, and then just got on with my day. And that afternoon, I did ask her about it, and she said the story was completely different. Claire said the woman started a fight with her, and she was just protecting herself. I said, "Why didn't you just tell me that last night?" And she said she didn't want me to be afraid of anything that was going on. I then asked her why she carried a knife, and she just said it was for protection. Being a dumb guy thinking with the wrong head, I let it go. Then she started being weird. Claire was always talking in French to me and trying to get me to learn, which was kind of cool. But when we had sex, she insisted I talk dirty in French and would get borderline aggro if I said anything in English. One time she was on top and started choking me when I didn't speak in French, so I pushed her off of me, grabbed my stuff, and left. The crying phone call came on my way home. She was sorry. I took her back and things went back to normal. For a few days. Then, at a really light group bike ride with a bunch of people, Claire got into it with another woman in the pack. I wasn't there, but I heard some shouting and then watched her ride away without even saying anything to me. But my mates told me she had threatened this woman because she had made a comment about my butt. I chased after Claire, but she had already gotten her bike on her roof rack and had driven off. I called and texted, but she didn't respond. At this point, I was thinking, man, this is a bad idea. Was she really worth it? That night, the next crying phone call happened again. I told her that if she didn't relax, we were taking a break. We'd only been together for 4 months at this point, and I ended up taking some time away from her. But about 2 weeks later, we started seeing each other again. I guess not a lot of this is scary to people at this point, but in November, I wanted to go skiing and planned what I thought would be a romantic retreat. My buddy, who I never told you, called Greg, we were going to take our ladies to a chalet for a weekend of skiing and chilling. Bad idea. The first night was cool. We skied all day and had a nice dinner at a lodge not far from our cabin, which was kind of away from the slopes in town. The next night, while we were in our room, we were having sex, and the same thing happened like the time before. This time she looked at me with these crazy eyes when I spoke English, and she said, "En français autrement," which basically means speak French or else. I realized then that Claire was not all there. Sorry for the bad rhyme. I decided that this shit was over as soon as we got home. On the car ride back, I told her I thought we should take another break and figure out what we both really wanted. She went silent and wouldn't say anything to me, so I just kept driving. When she did start talking, she was really worked up and would only speak in French, and a lot of the shit she was saying I couldn't keep up with. I didn't tell her at this point, but I had started recording our conversation on my iPhone. I wanted evidence why this relationship was over. Her being crazy. When our exit on the highway came up, she said in a very low voice, "Continuez juste à conduire et personne ne se blesse." I apologize if that's not perfect. The recording was shitty because my phone was in my jacket pocket, but I'll never forget it because I tried to look it up on Google. Again, at the time, I had no idea what she was saying, so I banged my hands on the wheel and yelled out, "English, motherfucker, do you speak it?" Just like Jules in Pulp Fiction. I was beyond pissed at this point. In a totally dead voice, she said in English, "Keep driving and you won't get hurt." I looked at her like, "Hey, I'm about to put my fist through your head, woman." When I looked down, and she had a gun in her lap pointed at me. No shit. A gun in her lap right at me. I didn't know what to do. I kept driving and driving until we actually left the state. We didn't say two words to one another the entire time. Then she said in English, "Please take me home." I just turned the car around, not saying a word, and we finally got to her place. I was almost pissing my pants. She looked at me and said, "C'est fini," and got out. I hit the fucking gas with all of her stuff and skis still on my car, and I called Greg and he said, "Dude, just call the cops." I pulled over a little while later, called 911, told them what had happened, and they told me to stay put. A car came out, and a really cool cop got me to calm down and got my story. I told them where Claire lived, and they sent someone there to get her. She wasn't there. They waited and waited, but she never showed up. I tried calling and texting her, but of course she was not going to answer me. The way I heard about things, they gave up and just kept calling her phone and showing up randomly to speak with her. Sometime during a lull in their checking on her, Claire got into her apartment, got a bunch of stuff, and disappeared. People might laugh, but this was emotionally damaging. I am by no means a pussy, but having a gun pointed at me scared the shit out of me. What happened to Claire? She fled the U.S. and went back to France. How do I know that? I got a postcard right after Christmas, postmarked Colmar, Alsace. It was blank and just said, "Au revoir, Claire." There's no way that that was not from her. Screw dating apps. I found my wife the next year at a cycling event, and not once have I been terrified to be around her, and she certainly has never pulled a gun on me. If you happen to hear this, Claire, wherever you may be, you're right. Au revoir. Man on the L, submitted by Ready Roxy. Back when I lived in Canarsie, I worked at a place in the Chelsea market. I would take the L every day back and forth at various times during the day depending on my shifts. I would just slap on my iPod, brand new tech back then, and veg out on music back and forth and just read books. My mama was a stern but worrisome Jewish lady who hated that I took the train on my own, but knew it was the only way I could get to work and back. She's gone now, bless her soul. But she told me that when she would do her Amida prayers every morning or afternoon, she would ask for me to be safe and protected on the train. My father had died when I was only 1. He was in a bad truck accident. He left us with a sizable amount of money that took care of things, but my mama was adamant about me and my brother working even though she spoke to me about marrying a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. Every time I got on the train, there was a man in whatever car I got on, dressed in a dark, boxy suit with a long Yiddish beard and a kippah. My family was Orthodox until my parents, who were still religious but not as strict as my Buba and Zade. After they got married, they changed a lot, and it kind of bothered my grandparents, but whatever. My mom still practiced but was not as strict as my grandparents. By the time I was working, both of my grandparents were gone on my father's side. My maternal grandparents had died before my brother and I were born, just to make sure there's no confusion about that. Anyway, I saw the same man no matter what car I was in, going to and from work every day, every shift change. There he was, always reading a newspaper and getting off at both stops, but never before me, I assumed, because whenever I looked back, I didn't see him. I told my mama that I thought there was a guy stalking me, but when I described him, she laughed and said it was probably just a man going to and from the same area that I was going. This went on for months until one night I decided to say something to him. Not aggressive or anything. Just asked him why he happened to be on the same trains the same days and the same times that I always was. It took me a while to get my courage up, but one night, after a long shift, and honestly on my last night before going to college, I got on the L and headed home. There was no one else on the train but me and this strange man who never looked at me, never talked to anyone else, never moved from his seat. I sat looking at my hands for a while and waited until the Canarsie stop came up. And right before, I gathered up my courage and stepped over to him and asked him point blank, "Do I know you? You look familiar." And now that I was up close, he did look familiar. He looked up from his book and said, "Yes, Nada, you do. You do know me." It was then that I realized he was my very, very dead grandfather. I started crying, and he said that my mama prayed every day for me to be safe, but my papa couldn't watch over me, and he was doing other things. He said he was sent to make sure I got to work and back instead, safely. Through tears, I asked him why he never said anything to me, why he never introduced himself, and he only smiled and said, "That's not how things work." The Canarsie stop came, and when I looked up from my shoes, he was gone. I was the only one in the car. I ran out and ran straight home. I went right past my mama and grabbed a picture of my Bubi and Zayde, and it was him. No question. It was the man on the train. I broke down again and told my mama everything, and she started crying too. I'll wrap up with this. I've been back on the L hundreds of times, sometimes as far up as Chelsea by myself, but most of the time usually with family or friends. But I never saw my Zayde after that last night on my final solo run. But I would like to say thank you for watching over me. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. I hope you enjoyed it. And I apologize for any of the words I mispronounced, whether they were French or Yiddish or what. I'm doing my best here with things that people send in. If you have a true scary story you'd like to hear narrated on my channel, email it to unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification button for every time that I upload. And remember, you can find me in podcast format on your favorite podcast platform. I am on every single one that you can imagine. Save yourself a little bit on data. Follow me on social media. All the links to that are in the description below. Until next time, everyone, be excellent to each other. And remember, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.
You seem fantastic, hey, hey, hey. Run. Please, 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 please. fantastic.